Welcome to the What's Up Ready podcast. We fashion ourselves cinematic Judge and Jury. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-hosts, Mattson Heiner.
Better red than dead.
And Alec Burgess.
Let's get it.
We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead and hit that follow, subscribe, like, bell notification buttons. Help keep up with all of our episodes. Tell a friend about us. Tell a family member about us. Tell a scientist or helicopter pilot or any person that might be up in Antarctica or spending some time there, you know, in the far, far north, and let them know because we appreciate that. But yeah, it's week 2 of our Practically Perfect movies. But before we jump into this week's movie, we do want to cover and talk about our sponsor, Manscaped. Man, it's Father's Day just keeps getting closer. And if you haven't yet, you need to get out and buy that Father's Day gift, because I bet some of us still haven't, even though we're not far off. But, you know, today's episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Maybe your pops has had a bush since the 70s, and that's okay. We all have our thing, right? But our friends at Manscaped have crafted the total package for his special day, whether it's for the boys downstairs, his beard, or even the best pair of underwear out there. Everybody okay?
Yeah, is there an earthquake going on in Seattle?
Oh, sorry, it was my chair moving.
Sounded like the whole house was moving. But, you know, whatever it is your father might be looking for, Manscaped has his bases covered. Head over to manscaped.com, get 20% off plus free shipping with the code THEVERDICT, all one word. From daddy to zaddy, these Gen Z shit, I don't know. Trust Manscaped, wherever you're going with it. But yeah, I mean, it's not just ball trimmers anymore. They got all sorts of stuff. And I think Mattson, you and I've talked a lot about the nose and ear and trimmers. Like,
oh yeah,
it's one of my favorite toys that came with the package that we have. And
love the nose trimmer.
I use it all the time. Gives you the
just
tingle.
Get proper sniffs.
Yeah.
Clear that
so
passage.
glad I'm not that old.
Hey, you know what? You'll get there, bitch. The ear hairs are the most disturbing. As you get older, you're like, reach in there to scratch your ear, and you're like, holy shit. So that's been nice, that little trimmer, to get it in there. So, but yeah, I mean, they have all sorts of cool stuff. Go check it out. Again, go to manscaped.com and use code THEVERDICT for 20% off plus free shipping. That's 20% off free shipping at manscaped.com using code THEVERDICT. And never forget where you came from, if you know what I mean, especially with Father's Day. Got to help out with those the jewels. But yeah, so happy Father's Day from Manscaped. Go check it out. Go get that discount. Thanks again to them for sponsoring all of our ridiculousness. We do appreciate it. With that, let's jump into this week's episode. Today, we're talking about The Thing. It was released June 25th, 1982. It was written by Bill Lancaster and John W. Campbell Jr. It's directed by John Carpenter. It stars a very impressive list. Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, Keith David, Richard Macer, T.K. Carter, David Clennon, Richard Dreiser, Charles Hallahan, Peter Maloney, Donald Moffat, and Joel Polis. And don't forget Thomas G. Waits. I almost forgot to say him. But it's about a research team in Antarctica that's hunted by a shape-shifting alien that assumes the appearance of its victims. Short, sweet, to the point. Works.
To the point. JJ, how old were you when you saw this? Because this is your movie.
I was probably 10 or 11 when I saw this. Maybe a little younger. I might have been 8 or 9.
This is an intense 10 or 11-year-old movie right there.
Yeah, I've had a thing for horror my whole life, and then I had a cousin, Chad, that I think I've told you about him. He locked me in the basement when I was a really young child to be a dick. But he also would let me watch any kind of ridiculous movies that I wanted to watch because he didn't give a shit. And so I always wanted to watch scary horror, murder, mayhem movies, you know, to fit in with my sociopathic tendencies and enjoyment of suffering and pain. So this was one of those movies that we watched, and it's always stuck with me. And I'll say it's one of those things where this one, as soon as this theme came about, like I was like, this will always be on the list because it probably more than a lot of movies, is a standard in Hollywood for practical effects, like what can be done, especially like in 1982 when CGI was not even really a real thing beyond crap. So, but yeah, this movie, look, I'm not going to sit and say this thing's a masterpiece by any stretch, but when it comes to practical effects and still being able to use those to an effective nature, like absolutely, this one always makes my top lists as far as that goes with practical effects, because it's wild.
When they remade this one in 2011, I haven't seen it. I don't know if you did, Jay, but did they use just a ton of CGI and it was like, or did they try and stay beholden to the OG?
Yeah, I mean, it's less than you would think, considering the predecessor, right? But still more than it should have been, because it's 2011 and they thought, well, we'll just do that way. And but yeah, I mean, they still used some level of practical effects, but it's more of a combination of the two as opposed to just this one where it was just purely practical.
JJ, did you know there's a video game?
The Thing?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that, actually.
It's considered canon by John Carpenter himself.
Interesting. Especially considering he didn't even want to do this movie. Like, but then they convinced him, because it's based on a book. And I don't remember how they convinced him, but he had a bunch of things that he was working on, getting ready to do, and then something happened. I don't remember the whole story, but he ended up taking it. But this film was riddled with weird stuff. Like, they had a hard time filling the lead role because of scheduling. So they went after Harrison Ford at one point, and there was a whole slew of other like major actors that they were looking to get to play the character that Kurt Russell plays, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason. Even though they showed interest, like there were some people that were showing interest, major stars, and they just couldn't make it work with their schedules that they had. So it ended up being Kurt Russell.
All right, trivia question. Rob Boyton, the individual that is credited for just kicking butt on the practical effects, how old was he?
22.
He was like 22.
Wow.
I was going to say, I think he's in his 20s. I didn't know 22.
You must have looked that up, Alec.
I did not. I took a wild guess.
Well done, sir.
Yeah, like that's incredible. I mean, he's just getting into the start of his career, and he's now like probably one of the godfathers of practical effects. I mean, I'm sure he set the standard that, like Jay was saying. I mean, I've seen a lot of movies. I hadn't seen this till I saw it, and I was like, wow. Like, yeah. They go.
It's been one long downhill ride since 1982.
Yeah,
sure.
So he gets a lot. He gets all the credit, and there was another special effects guy. So the part where the one guy's head comes off and like turns into the spider, that there was a part, and then the one of the dog pieces. I think there was I think it might have been the big dog attack where it's in the dog kennel and just taking all. There was a part where he was very little involved because he was resting, because he actually was suffering from exhaustion from all the work that he was putting in for the rest of the film and what they were filming and doing. But the guy that did that scene refused to take credit and put his name in the credits for it because of the work that kid was doing and the fact that it was so good. He's like, I don't want to taint it with my name because I'm a known special effects artist. What he's doing is above and beyond. And like, I mean, when you think about like I said, the movie itself, like there's a lot of weird pieces to the movie where you're like, why would you do that? And then like, or like, for example, like one thing that always bothers me when I watch this is throughout this movie at the beginning, when they figure out that there's an issue here, there's an alien or whatever it is, the one guy talks about it being highly contagious. And you see the computer spitting out the numbers and things like that as he's doing the algorithm. He talks about it before he heats up the little piece of wire and shoves it in the blood, that each piece of this organism is its own living entity. And yet they're all okay cutting themselves with the same fucking blade. And I'm like, but that's counterintuitive. So I see those things and I'm like, oh, that's just stupid. But when I also watch this, like I cannot help but enjoy, and even though sometimes it looks wonky, right? Like it's so good because it's practical, and you're like, in 1982, this dude's head falling off and turning into a spider, or the big giant piece near the end where it's like these giant tentacles and like the dog head and the human head and the half animal. Like you're just like, man, the amount of freaking work you'd have to do to create something like that. And it's
Well,
creepy and it's intense.
it made me think of there's a film that came out, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, Prometheus, the space one,
Yeah.
that obviously used a ton of CGI. I mean, it was creepy in its own right, but then I thought of this movie, or having watched this movie, I was like, man, like Alec was kind of saying, we've talked about this, I think, over the last week or two. I think Hollywood needs to almost have a return to practical effects and have a better blending of the two. Because as we talked about before, CGI makes things better when it's added in the right situation. But I think there's times we just become too reliant. And then you see something like this and it stands the test of time. You're like, where has this been? And I think we talked about it in ways we get lazier, it's expensive. But I wish at times we could see both and have it combined. And I think that would, I mean, you think of this movie, they took what they did then and when they filmed this in 82, and if they had the technology they have now and they blended that together, I mean, this movie could have been truly terrifying.
Yeah. Not just the well, and here's the best part for me, and this is one of the reasons I do like this movie, is that it's, for me, it's less about the monster. The monster's kind of secondary. It creates the tension, but it's the lack of ability to trust anybody around you, and you're in this isolation. You can't escape. There's questions about, do we really want to escape, considering we don't know? So like that whole level of tension for me in this movie, like I remember every time I watch that, I'm like, man, that's nuts. Like if I'm what's his face, and I don't know, like I can't think of his last name. I'm having a hard time with the character names today. But if I'm Kurt Russell's character and I've got them all tied up to a
How
couch,
could you forget JJ? RJ
McCready. That's
McCready,
right.
sorry, McCready.
Mac.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
such a
Fuck,
dumb
dude.
name.
I know. Mac. Yeah, if I'm him and I got a freaking I got both flamethrowers and they're tied to a couch, I'm smoking them all. I don't give a shit. If I know I'm not, and they're all sitting there, sorry, fellas. I'm barbecuing your ass and you're keeping me
You're
warm.
barbecuing me that quick?
Fucking hell right I am. Dude, I
do it too.
I just watched the dude's head fall off and turn into a spider and try to crawl out of the
I
room.
definitely wouldn't do
You're
that. I would try to
smoked.
find out the people I care about if they were terror. I can't be Jay's friend anymore. I'd expect this of Alec though.
Oh, 100%. You're both getting smoked.
Oh yeah, dude. And if I'm on the couch and you smoke, I get it. Like if I let myself get messed up and caught and tied to a couch, burn me. Because I get it. Like I can't even be mad at it. Because I would. In this situation, hell
I
yeah.
like the premise. That I think it's one of the best things about this movie, the premise of it. But I will say, like it's not that the acting performances were bad, but the character like depth and like the progression. I mean, to me personally, it left a little to be desired. Like I wasn't as beholden to it as maybe I wanted to be. Like they could have leaned in a little bit more in some of that tension or some of the characters, and maybe I just need to watch it again and I'll pick up on more of that. But I didn't like the first watch. I didn't feel that as much as maybe I wanted to.
I get that.
I feel that because it's kind of similar to the feeling I have, Mattson, but a little bit more like they started out so good with this story, right? And you have this dog running through the ice, right? Crazy Norwegians are shooting it and not a very good shot at it. But you have this story and that this, alien entity thing seems pretty smart, right? But then I don't understand why it keeps imitating and changing when it's better just to be like, yo, sit tight. Like clearly this whole changing thing didn't work well at the Norwegian station. Like, adapt, improvise, overcome, right? And try and change your viewpoint. Because I don't remember there ever being any reason why it has to change or has to imitate.
I agree. I don't, unless JJ can remember something. I don't remember any of that. Yeah.
So it's just that story element that they put in there, a reason for it to kind of keep moving, add to that tension. But I was almost thinking like, I think it'd be worse if you found just pieces of clothes, right? Like if you found McCready's jacket, but he's still there and he doesn't remember burning it, all this kind of thing. Like, what's going on? There's something new. But like, as soon as it bursts out in the dog kennel and starts, imitating the dogs again, I'm like, man, this thing's fucking stupid.
No,
The other aliens kicked it out of the spaceship. That's what happened.
Yeah, no shit. Well, no, I get it, because I always get confused when the dude that his head comes. I keep coming back to this guy, but that guy's death always confused me, because I'm like, what? Like, he had him tricked for the most part, right? Like, and
he had me tricked. I was like, there's no way that dude's one of them.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden he just like falls over, and then it's like they're trying to do CPR and shit. I'm like, what? There had to have been, and I think this is the explanation I'm waiting for, is like during the process, like if it doesn't have the ability to do it in full, like there's things that are just not completed or something. You know what I mean? Like, I needed some explanation as to why he falls over, and then all of a sudden, like, and I love the scene where he's giving him CPR, and then his hands go through his chest and it bites his arm off. Which, cool fact about this scene, sorry to ruin your trivia if you had any more, Mattson, about this one, but that scene when he's doing it, like they cut in and his arm goes out. They actually got a double arm amputee to play it as he's coming out. So again, practical effects, and then they put a mask of a very shit mask. Like, if you go back and rewatch that scene, the guy that was doing the CPR, as he comes up, you can clearly see it's a mask if you don't look at his arms, but we all look at his arms, so you don't notice this shitty mask. But yeah, it was a true double amputee that they got to come in so that they didn't have to, like, because they couldn't, like nowadays they would just put some blue socks on his arm and then they cut that shit out in post. But I was like, fuck, you look at his arms, you're like, God damn, he just got his fucking arms bit off by a dude's chest. That's bitching. But yeah, if you watch it, like, you can see he's wearing a mask of that actor's face. It's interesting.
Alec, here you go. There's a few different reasons why it would have changed. So, how it reproduces is through the assimilation process. So when it converts to another host, it essentially like copies itself. So it's making more of it. So it would have been an advantage to say, hey, I'm going to make more of me, increase my chances of survival. I'm going to freak the crap out of these people as well, confuse the crap out of them. And I'm going to have access to different roles and skills to increase my chances of survival. And then I think it just comes down to, I think in reading all this, must be, I don't know, it's from a fan or someone that really cares about this movie, but I think it was just increasing its odds of survival, because I didn't know that it effectively copied itself. But then if that's true, which you could make next time I watch it, if I told myself that, I'd be like, all right, okay, makes sense. And then it works for the movie because it was surely more terrifying.
Like, I feel like you switched the computer algorithm about how quickly it's going to take over the world to that. Because you can infer what's going to happen if this thing can copy itself.
Funny, I texted Jay about the computer thing. I was like, that part of it, I was like, the computers in 1982, even computers, I'm like, I'm sorry, that's a lot of computing power. It's just not believable that you're going to know exactly how long and all. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. I was too in your face, like, oh yeah, what was it, 27 hours? Like, wow, we really got that. Like, we're like, come on.
I mean, if I had the right algorithm, but you're right. Like, computers back then, they were better at just telling you that you died of malaria. Like, that's what,
the right algorithm. He didn't even know what this thing was.
Well, I mean, fair enough. I mean, but that's, I guess, like, that's the part I don't believe, is the when you see on the computer screen, like the molecules overtaking the other molecule. I'm like, I don't know that they had computers that would that look like fucking asteroids without the ship. Like, that's
I remember the computer I first had when I was in the 90s. Hell no, one couldn't do that. No. But that's, I think, to Alex's point, though. I think if they had leaned away from that computer explanation somehow did the narrative about what we just talked about the need to copy and reproduce, increase its chance, that would have been, I mean, you could have easily introduced that where the biologist could have been like, based off what we know, I mean, we know about nature. It's pretty much nature's goals is you want to survive. And if you had gone through that narrative, to me, that's more terrifying having that told to us than a computer screen saying it's going to take over after this amount. Like, I think that could have been an interesting avenue.
Sure.
Because then I'm definitely smoking both of y'all. It's gonna have a chance to copy itself.
Well, yeah, to JJ's
Nope.
point, then you know, like it's happening a lot quicker, and that's where I think when I say not it wasn't the acting, but I think once it started to happen, I thought there was going to be much more of like, hey, you're over here, I'm over here, like we got to lock down, like that. It took so long for that to kind of happen. It didn't really happen. I was like, I feel like we would have operated differently. Like this is too loosey goosey at some point, and maybe that's more of what I was getting at. That I expected it to change faster, the situation of caution, and it never. Like I was like, okay, we're at the end here, and like Jay just said, we're cutting with the same knife. Like we're all gone. Like we're all dead. Like it's over.
Yeah.
I was also waiting for something along the lines of like that, almost like Catch-22, maybe is the best way to put it. Where it turns out there's actually two of them, right? So you take like, let's just say it was McCready and Giles, right? And Giles is one of them. McCready figures out, but they're all alone. Somebody else, I don't know, the radio guy, what was his name? Windows. Yeah, Windows pops in, but turns out he's one of them too. Like, and you get, because we get that a little bit at the end, but by that point they've already eliminated everybody else, and there's just the one last guy they already locked up. And it's like, oh, I wonder who the monster is.
Yeah.
But if you had something like that, so it had copied itself, now it's got two people, like that would have been almost that red herring kind of, oh shit moment, because now it's not just jumping from host to host and they're able to, you know, kind of keep one step behind it. Now it's like, shoot, everybody's like there's we're done.
Yeah. I think for me, like the one thing I wish they kind of the same pattern, but for me, like after the dog situation, like it's so open and blatant when it takes over the dogs, right? And everybody sees this, like, and at that point, I always feel two things. One, they're a little too calm about let's just cut everything open and find. I'm like, hold on, like let's not.
Yeah, they're not wearing like any masks. I'm like, you don't even know how it's transmitted. Like, like I kept. That's such a good point. Like every time it's like they're not wearing. They're covering. They're not wearing anything. Like stop that.
Well, that's like, and I'm like, okay, that's not. This isn't just something. And they're way too calm about it. Like, you know, they're like, burn the fucking thing. But I'm like, okay, great. This thing is one thing, and it's just latched on to every dog in your kennel pretty much. And is like trying to be, and I'm like, everybody's too calm. And then for me, like it progressed too fast to the human piece. Like what I want is, okay, if they're going to be like, whoa, this is the find of the century, we don't know that it's unsafe at this point. Like there's a moment in the movie where it doesn't pay off for me when the dog, before it gets put in the kennel, the dog goes into the room with the one guy, and then the scene cuts away, and you're like, oh shit. And then you find out that the dog is the problem a little later. That was a great lay-in, but then they don't pay it off. For me, like I want it to be like, who's been alone with the dog, right? And then it's everybody's been alone with the dog. Now I've got everybody. So now my freaking hackles are up. I'm like, I'm sitting in a corner with my back to the wall with the flamethrower in front of me, and anybody walks through the door, you're a hot dog, so just leave me alone. And you'll be fine. But if you come in here, I'm gonna fuck you up. But like in that level of tension where it's like, and then, but you also have the flip side of how do you survive on your own? Like there's obviously chaos. There's obviously shit that's going to be happening out there. Like, how do you survive on your own? So you kind of need help, or you would want some help, but how do you trust anybody? Like, how do you, so like that level of tension can then be used to ramp it up. And they get it right in some parts, like when they're all in the room and they're testing the blood and shit, you're like, oh fuck, who's gonna lose their shit, right? Like when's this gonna go? But I wanted more of that didn't have payoff, so that when we get to that moment, it's even better. And it's great when he starts shaking and they're all freaking the fuck out, like get me. I'm like, that sucks to be you are tied to this person, this thing on this couch, and it's like jumping out, landing on the ceiling, freaking crazy. But yeah, I think that for me, like not having so many scenes with the monster like would have added to the tension and letting the kind of drag out a little bit more with like the man on man. Even have some where you like maybe because I was thinking, I was like, how do you like take advantage of this situation too? Because you could have one of these guys that's epileptic, has a seizure, and everybody's like freaking the fuck out. You know what I mean? But turns out,
Barbecue.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you could really do some fucked up shit with this from
Oh,
a
you'd
human
roast them, Jay.
nature. Absolutely. I'm just saying from a human nature perspective. And for me, like that's more scary than sometimes an alien or a monster or a ghost is how fucked up we are as human beings in a tight situation
So let
sometimes.
it be known to our listening audience, I would not be going to Antarctica with JJ.
That's not a good idea.
Although that's pretty much where JJ should live because he freaking loves cold weather.
Yeah.
You'd be a happy man.
I always love the scenes too, when like the beard that Kurt Russell has is like half frozen. I'm like, I've been there. I've done that. That shit hurts.
Stupid. JJ, did you know the sound stages where these sets were kept at 40 degrees Fahrenheit to get
That's
the performances
awesome.
he wanted? I thought he was like, should have been right at home. Like,
Yeah.
just
It's
keep
perfect.
going.
So that actually cracks me up because I was dying every time they went outside in Antarctica. And like at the beginning of the movie, Kurt Russell takes out a bottle of booze.
Yeah.
He's like drinking it outside. I'm like, oh, that wouldn't be like that anymore.
No, I mean alcohol is hard to freeze, but in those temperatures,
It would have been gone.
yeah, it's gonna freeze.
That's hilarious, though. But
Yeah, it takes a lot to freeze alcohol, but
pays off because outside from me just looking at it, going, "Wait a minute!" Like it looks like there's someplace cold.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, like I said, the freaking the frosty beard, man, that shit's no joke. Like it's uncomfortable when you're, and I've never had it to that level, but like I've had like the part, especially around my mouth, where you get the moisture coming off your breath and it freezes. Oh, it's uncomfortable. Shit's cold and it hurts. And I was like, so when he comes in on that one moment, we're like, where is he? He comes in and he's just covered and oh, it's cold. That's cold. So, but yeah, I just like I said, from when as soon as this topic came up, this was like number one going to be on my list to vote for, because still to this day, I can't think of very many movies that took as many risks and pulled it off for the technology, like outside of like a Star Wars level where their practical effects were so successful. Like this one to me is right up there with that, from on a different genre and a different place, but it is so cool. And some of them work really well, others don't work as well. But like, man, some of them are so good that you just like, and one of the reason it worked out so well is because John Carpenter was very picky. Like they wanted to do some stop motion in some of the animation, and he's like, I don't like the way it looks, so we're not going to do it. Which is why you get a lot of the monster like kind of being stationary and like screaming, and then the tentacles coming out, because it didn't require the stop motion, which John Carpenter didn't like at all. So it's very interesting the way that they pulled it off. But yeah, from an effects perspective and even from a story perspective, it's very interesting. But there are a lot of errors, like a lot of weird shit that I'm like, I don't know about that. And there's some like weird like filming things too, like the part where we were talking about when they're on the couch and the dude goes up to the ceiling. Part of that ceiling tile breaks, but instead of falling down, it like you can see part of it break and fall what looks like up from our angle, because they filmed it upside down, like he was falling as opposed to being up. So when it broke, the piece went down onto the ground instead of falling towards the floor. And I was like, so the more I watch it, the more I see little shit like that. So I'm like, that's funny. They can create this wicked monster effect with a mouth in his chest, but they didn't redo a scene because a broken tile looked like it fell upward. So anyway, but I enjoyed it a lot. Always do this movie.
Yeah, it's a good psychological premise. Great special effects. The blood was not good special effects. It was like red jello at some points, or like my hair color, honestly, at points. Like they didn't get that right in 82. I don't know why they couldn't have done that part better. When they show, it was after that one guy, that it was that scene where the individual comes in and like looks at it, is like, are we really keeping this here? And then he puts it back, and we see it move for the first time, and it gets his buddy, and they show his clothes. I'm like, they got real close to the clothes and the blood. I was like, you really thought that looked like blood? I know you could make that look better, and it didn't at all.
Yeah. Problem is, back in the 80s and early 90s, they tried to make it look fake, or at least somewhat fake, because they actually cared about scarring human beings. And
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason, because otherwise they could have clearly made it look a lot better. But so was the 80s.
Yeah.
They also did a lot of weird things that I'm like, well, you scarred people in other ways.
Yeah, like giant spider heads. It's weird.
Yeah.
Oh shit! All right, should we rate this thing?
Let's do it.
All right, it's my movie. I go first. It's been a while since I've gone first. I'm gonna give this movie a 3.5. There's a lot of weird things that you can tell. Like, they did a lot with the effects and the story and like some set pieces and things like that, but they didn't do as much with some of the continuity things like that. And I think they could have done more to ramp up the tension, which is saying something, because the movie's tense. Like, especially at certain parts, again, when the human nature piece is coming out, it is tense. It's got a great cast. Like, every one of those cast members, as young as they are in this film, like, if you look at them now, you're like, fuck, they were in a lot of shit. They're just older, and that's what I remember them from. Like, I always think of the guy that goes cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs that they put out in this, Blair. He was in the movie Cocoon as an old man, and he just recently, before he passed away, he was in Yellowstone as the guy that ran the 4 Sixes Ranch. So like, he's hugely famous, but I didn't recognize him without his mustache. And then like, you got the one guy was in the It 90s It series. I can't remember, and he's the dog guy, and I'm like, holy fuck sticks, like, that's him. Like, it's just so interesting. So, but a huge cast, really set Kurt Russell on a path. Like, I just enjoy this film. I think it's well done. I love the fact that they stuck with full practical. John Carpenter's a horror genius, and he showed it in this, is like he does with most everything. So 3.5 for me. Could be better in a lot of ways, but when it comes to practical effects and a good tense movie, this one's up there. So, all right, Mattson.
I'm gonna give this movie a 3. I mean, I wouldn't say it's by any, like Jay just said, by any standards, a great movie, but I was entertained. It's not an over. I think it's like an hour and 40 minutes, solid, like normal length. Compelling, interesting, alien people in a cold environment, can't go anywhere story that you probably have seen in some other movies, but it's entertaining. And the fact that this is all practical effects and what it really set the bar for. I wish I'd seen this movie sooner. I think this is a movie I will watch again. I'll probably put in my like Halloween rotation. Kind of gets the juices flowing there, and I'm happy to watch it. Really good movie.
Nice. All right, Alec, bring us home, buddy.
Gonna be a 3.5 for me. So to kind of echo what you guys said, effects were amazing. It's not really necessarily what I pay attention to in a lot of movies, so to speak. And so for me, it was the holes in the story. Like, Blair dug that tunnel and built that ship in record fucking time, bro. Like, alien or not, man, it was working on that thing for months. That's what was happening there. So I was like, I mean, because there's opportunity, right? If you just elongate the timeline, because any reason could hold up this rescue team or this relief team type of a thing. So I was like, oh, you had opportunity. And for me, the effects don't really balance it out. So it's like, yeah, it's 3.5, good, solid movie. And the effects are amazing, like 100%. But I was like, oh, you guys kind of fucked up the story a little bit. And you had every opportunity to make it great. I won't be watching it again. It's not because I was scared of it or anything, but it's just like, I guess it's not really my cup of tea.
It's fair.
But 3.5, good movie.
Yeah. I'm going to get you one of these days, Alec. One of these days, you're going to be like,
okay,
we're not going to be friends anymore after
I'll tell you what's going to get me, and I'm going to hate myself that I'm opening up my mouth. Okay?
I'm not watching it.
Because I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it's fucking shit that could happen to me.
I know.
Like, fucking possession. Like, if you were to say, hey, we're watching The Nun, I would be like, like, that's the shit that gets me.
Gotcha.
Tay's not gonna let me watch that.
No, yeah, it's
Like The Exorcist and things like that. I'm like, no,
That's the stuff I don't care to watch because it's too close to home for what I believe. If I believe in God, then I gotta believe in there's the other stuff, and it's a little too close for comfort. JJ's a non-believer these days, so it's just entertainment.
yeah. It's always been entertainment for me. So yeah, I will get you though. One of these days, I'm gonna get you one way or
That's
another.
the subject matter. He just teed you up.
I know. Yeah, but I don't like movies like The Nun, though, so I don't want to watch them. Like, it's the problem. Is they suck. Like, I've seen them. I don't enjoy those types. Like, there's not very many that I enjoy around that realm. So
that's good. JJ's in for enjoyable horror, which saves us.
It does. I've watched most of the unenjoyable stuff too, but I prefer the enjoyable. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. But yeah. Alec, tell everybody where they can find us when we're not talking about what horror movies to get you with.
Happy to. So the thing kicks off another week of practically perfect movies. This is week 2, I believe. I'm not sure. So how did our review of The Thing match with yours? Is this the most practically perfect movie ever? Let us know in the comments below. Special thanks to our patrons for the pick and the monthly topic. That's Rich. You just gave me the list. Male Nipple Appreciation Society and Mel Brooks. So great month pick, great movie pick. With that, I will kick it back to the Mauling Monarch, a Jack Dunn's baby, a JJ.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Yeah, go pick up the Patreon. Maybe you guys will know what Alec can't handle.
Please save us from these Three Stooges. Someone else join.
I like our current Three Stooges.
You like them because they particularly just like to pick on me. Except Rich, you're
you
real one.
Do
Rich.
it to yourself.
Oh, shit.
Rich, I appreciate you stepping up, being a man of the people, and helping a brother out. Can't say the rest for those other suckers, especially Charles.
He picked a good movie that you love for his quarterly pick.
I know. This month,
What are you doing?
Charles gave me a nice warm hug, and when we review Toy Story 2, it's going to be a special review. I'm just going to leave it at
that. I love it. Yeah, so go get on. We have fun with the patrons, so go get on there. Check us out.
Fun. They have fun with us.
Absolutely.
It's like I have a ton of fun. I'm hooked up to like an electric chair. They won't kill me, but they'll shock my arm and then my foot, and I'm dying. And they're like, no, we'll stop now. You're fine.
Yeah, I have a great time with our patrons.
No lie detected.
With that, as always, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Cinemagic out.
Whoa!